Hi, welcome to Mr. Otter Studio. Today I'm going to show you a really fun, simple technique for marbling paper. And this is based on the Suminagashi. It's a Japanese technique. And in Japanese, Suminagashi means ink floating. At least that's what I read on the internet. I don't have any Suminagashi ink that you're supposed to use for this technique. So instead I'm going to be using calligraphy ink. And I have had this literally for over 10 years. And it works for this technique, so I'm going to be using it. Waterproof calligraphy ink. You can also buy ink that is made specifically for Suminagashi technique. In the comment section below, I'll put links to those. For the technique that I'm going to be using, I'm just going to be using a clear section and then a colored section. And so for the clear section, I have a cup of water with a drop of soap in it, dish soap. I have my ink, and then you need 2 paintbrushes. And I'm going to be using paintbrushes from our set that we sell on Amazon. So these come with our watercolor paper, and I use them for everything. You might want a paper towel just to keep things clean. And the last thing we need to talk about is paper. So you do need to use 100% cotton paper for this. So I'm going to be using this paper. I don't have any white paper, but I'm going to be using this kind of soft gray Stonehenge cotton, 100% cotton paper. But then I'll also show you what it looks like just on normal printer paper, just so you can kind of get an idea of what works best. All right, let's get started. This is a great technique, and it reminds me of tree rings, like what it looks like when you cut a tree open. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to have one brush that I'm going to use just with my water and my soap, and then one brush just for ink. You won't be able to see these once I start doing the technique. So just remember, the one on my left is the water with a little soap. The one on my right will be the one with ink. All right, so make sure your water is still. You don't want to be working with water that's moving a lot, or this is really hard to do. Get your water soap solution on one brush and your ink on another brush. And when you dip in the water, you want to dip into the water perpendicular, so it's straight up and down instead of at an angle like this. And you want to just barely, barely, barely touch the surface of the water. And alternate between your color and your water, and just keep going. You can do as many as you would like. You can stop here and kind of let it move around, or you can keep going. So I kind of like how this looks, so I'm just going to print this. Grab your paper, press it over your print. I like to press mine all the way down. Flip it over and then move it around, so any of that excess ink, you can see it's kind of blurring my lines a little bit, is going to get washed away. So that we have nice crisp edges between our colors. Set it aside, let it dry, and you are finished. These lines would look a little bit crisper if my paper wasn't gray and instead it was white. Also, if I was using a darker color, that would make these a little bit more crisp as well. While you're printing, here's some troubleshooting. If your lines are really blurry, like in this example, right as you print, you need to rinse that excess ink off like I showed you in this example. So just flip it over and kind of move it around a little bit under the water. You don't want to scrub it with your hand or anything like that. Just lightly move it back and forth, and the water should take away that excess ink. Also, if it's just super, super light, you might be using the wrong paper. It will print into just white printer paper, and I can show you an example of that. This is kind of what that looks like. This is printer paper. It's just not going to be as crisp and as sharp. And those are the only tips I can think of. So anyway, this is a really, really fun technique, and it's a really calm, soothing technique just because you're letting ink and water kind of do its thing, and it's a really mindful kind of way of painting. You can't really control exactly what it's gonna do, and that's a good thing to practice sometimes, because sometimes I think we try to have too much control over our art mediums instead of kind of working with it and its characteristics and kind of sometimes letting it take the lead, if that makes sense. But anyway, hope you learned something today. Thank you so much for painting with me. You could use this for cards, you could use it for bookbinding. You can use these prints for so many different projects. I actually think they just look beautiful on their own. You can use other things besides ink on this. I've seen people use acrylic paint, but of course the best thing to use is going to be the Sumi ink that is basically made for this process, from what I understand. So anyway, thank you so much for painting with me. I would love to see your projects. Post them to Instagram using hashtag Mr Otter Studio or hashtag Mr Otter Art Studio, and have a wonderful day.